Welcome to Autumn Teashares. My name is Julia Torres, or if you're in a Spanish-speaking country, Julia Torres. If you're in a Portuguese-speaking country, Julia Torres, all the things. And I am a librarian in Denver, Colorado. I am working right now with students in grades 6 through 12. So they're approximately, I would say, 11 to 17 or 18 years old. And I am a former language arts teacher. So I'm a full-time librarian right now, but I do facilitate language arts professional development. So language arts professional development for teachers. And then I also do curriculum design within my own district. And I'm happy to be here with you today. So I'm gonna let each of my distinguished panelists introduce themselves. And I would like to start with Osa, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Osa Oyegun, and I am currently a second grade teacher in Abuja, Nigeria. I teach lower elementary, first or second grade, also a teacher librarian candidate at the San Jose State University. And at the core of my practice is community building and inclusive education, teaching my little kids to disrupt bias in their environment. And that includes looking at the literature in their classrooms and what they have at home, and just making sure that they are seen and heard as the primary voices and sources as they develop.
Thank you, Osa. Henan, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so my name is Hanan Leichi. I'm originally from Brazil. I'm currently working in Tunisia as a secondary school librarian. I also work through social justice lenses in my library. I make sure that my collection is as diverse as possible, and I purposefully try to steer my readers away from classics, books written by white people, and about white people. I want to make sure that they're reading books about different people from different ethnicities and beliefs, countries, make sure that they learn from other cultures.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Henan. Elaine, could you go next?
Hi, my name is Elaine Fong. I'm a librarian, a primary librarian, grades 1 to 6 in Singapore at the Canadian International School. We do inquiry-based learning with the PYP. And I also try to integrate diverse books and just I do a lot of teaching. That's all I can say. And it's always linked to social emotional learning, the units of inquiry, which includes things like sharing the planet, and also things about activism. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us, Elaine. Carlos, take it home.
My name is Carlos Diaz, also known as Mr. Panda by my students and among the teacher community. I am a K-12 librarian in the American School of Vietnam, but I come originally from Venezuela. I believe in games and play as in the power of play to educate, and I research gamification and game-based learning. And in my library, I perform and design all kinds of activities using games and gamification to engage students and also support teachers, making their classes more engaging, including gamification into their curriculum.
Awesome. So I do want to talk about something that is the elephant in the room right now, which is that so many of us are doing either virtual, hybrid, or in-person instruction. And we have to acknowledge that COVID-19 has swept the world. So given that we're all in these various locations, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what librarianship looks like where you are. And then I will kind of wrap things up. So Elaine, could we start with you?
I was afraid you asked that, but actually, I have to say, online learning was very interesting for me. You know, when you're doing online meetings, everyone's like, you know, people really have to be focused, and they're aware of the time, they're cognizant of the time, and it's like, okay, and they delegate well, and that's carried over to the learning. Like we've gone back to school in Singapore, we've got lots of days where it's 0 infections, or it's like just less than 5 in the community. So we've gone back, we came right back full, like, you know, in person to person. And you know, a lot of that delegation, that organization has come back, and I still use that format of learning, you know, that I've really got my game up. So the other thing was, I was thinking, how do I do that? But at the same time, I can still use online learning in a good way. Like, for instance, this month is, I just wanted not to do Thanksgiving and not to do Deepavali, which I know is sort of counter to what everyone's saying about diversity, but I just want to make it fun. So I want to do D-November, right? It's a month of dinosaurs, right? But I was thinking, how can I do that? How can I celebrate that and reach everyone in the school without seeing them person to person? So I've gone back to online learning. So what I've done is I've done recordings of me reading stories, and that's been distributed to all the teachers. And, you know, it's fun. If you want to do it, you can do it. You know, a kid's got a bit of 15 minutes time, they can do that. But when you come to the library, it's back to information literacy. It's back to whatever units of inquiry we're doing, you know, numeracy literacy. So I sort of do that as an add-on. So I've tried to integrate it that way. I think that's what you mean by hybrid learning, right?
Yeah,
So,
it's both.
yeah, so I've had a really good experience with it, and I felt I learned a lot. But that first 2 weeks was a real tough learning curve.
However, I think the most interesting thing that happened to me during the online learning that carry on to today, in which we are back to class, is that we started using Discord, the chat app.
Yeah, you can watch things together on Discord too.
Yeah, I set up a library Discord because
Oh,
the middle school, high school was the middle school, high school library is a community space. So a lot of people go and not only read books but play board games or do activities or meet with a teacher or ask for help or a lot of things happen in that library when it was open. So when it was closed, that space disappeared, and I tried to create it, creating a Discord server with channels for each one of these activities. A channel for, let's say, board games, and a channel for talking about homework or the things that they are missing. A channel for citations and research help, and channel
that's
for
a really
resource.
good idea, Carlos. I'd like to do
That's
something
nice.
like
Yeah.
that.
It worked wonders. That Discord was active all night. That was the problem. Obviously, they didn't respect the times of what time they should go into Discord in school hours. School hours, what's always, because obviously they are in online learning, so there was not a specific time schedule. And the Discord is alive today, even when they don't really need it. They still use it whenever they have a question for research or how to cite this, how to use, what are the MLA rules for citing a YouTube video, which is the question that they ask the most. And just a couple of hours ago, we finished our ongoing session of Dungeons and Dragons that they've been playing through Discord
Wow.
since the pandemic. So it was a really good solution to creating a community and keeping a community alive in a hybrid situation and the online learning part.
That's so interesting. So are you fully virtual? Are you hybrid? Or are you in person?
I'm in person, but Discord's still alive.
Okay. Wow. That's amazing. You gave me a lot to think about because I think that that might be a way to engage some of my people. And I'll talk to you after OSA a little bit about what my experience has been. But thank you so much, Carlos, for sharing that. That's a great idea. All right,
It
OSA,
is.
what are things like for you?
So, in thinking a little bit like Carlos and a little bit like Elaine, I wanted to maintain that classroom community with my kids while we were doing distance learning. And I recorded books that I read to them, just like I would have in the classroom, because that was an activity. Reading was huge in our classroom. And students would record responses to them and then sort of listen to each other's responses and discuss whether or not they agreed. So 7-year-olds who missed seeing each other in person had the opportunity to discuss with each other, like just read the same book, think about their reading and what they liked about it, and leave responses for each other. So of course we used other resources like Epic and then any other websites that were available to us. But I think for us, the main thing was just having access to the same thing, the same books, getting to hear each other's voices and maintaining some sort of community connection, because that's what they really, really missed.
I think that's what I'm hearing kind of across the board, that for the very youngest kids, this has been the hardest. And I have
Absolutely.
older kids, so you know, it's difficult for them too. But that it's interesting how, I don't know if you all are having this experience, but my middle grade students, some of them still have their cameras on. They still are very active when you want to do a read aloud. But the older students, they usually have camera off. Who knows if they're even attending? Sometimes I'll ask for some feedback and they'll do something in the chat and I'll know that everyone's there, or I'll give them a task to do and then I'll see that everyone has done it, like a Google form or whatever. And that's my sort of check-in, that I know that they were there because I saw that they completed the assignment. But a lot of the time it's me teaching to cameras off because we want to respect people's privacy at home. So I sit here and I'm doing a read aloud or giving instruction and everyone's got their cameras off and they're silent. So then I'll say, okay, can I get like a 1 if you still need more time, a 5 if you're finished? And they'll type it into the chat, but it's a very weird experience because we cannot do what we did in person in the virtual environment in the same way. It just doesn't work. So that's when I love to hear things like Carlos's Discord solution, because you know, I'm still struggling to think about how am I going to provide social opportunities like there were in the library when people could be there and doing, you know, makerspace things, or going to, we got a lab for them to explore gaming and things like that. It had a different teacher because I have 5 schools on campus, so I'm not able to be the tech lab person in addition to the librarian doing circulation, in addition to the person supervising folks who are, you know, at tables doing various things. That's a lot. And in addition to teaching class. So I can't do all of those things at the same time. So what my days look like now is going back and forth between the librarianship piece of, you know, monitoring circulation, checking in with kids, some of the things that Hanan was saying in terms of emailing kids and making sure that they get the books that they want, but then also doing instruction. So teachers will invite me into their classroom and I'll do instruction. And one of the things that I have coming up is that we are doing a unit on scatter plots with 2 math teachers. So I'm coming in to talk about the real life application of these mathematic principles. And they were using some fancy math terms that, since I have language arts training, I wasn't exactly comfortable with, but they're so, you know, gracious and including me and, you know, wanting the research, the librarian research piece. So I will be in that class delivering instruction with them and then using the library databases to get the students engaged in, you know, doing real life research. So how does this math principle apply to my actual life? And I think we're going to start with COVID-19 rates in Colorado and air quality and things like that. So that's a little bit of what my librarianship life looks like right now, but I do a lot of book talking. And when I do the book talking, there are 2 ways that I'll do it. There's a website called Loom, Loom. So I'll record myself doing a Loom and using that to do the book talk. And then anybody can watch it, just like you said, Elaine, whenever they have time, anybody can watch it. And I'll also send them out in a weekly newsletter, or I'll visit a classroom and just book talk a stack of books. And then I try to get them checked out. Usually there are several takers for several of the titles, and I'll get them checked out, you know, that day, hopefully. But this is a lot of trial and error. I will be honest. It is a lot of trial and error. It is a lot of, wow, I had amazing plans and then it just did not work out at all the way that I thought. So I've been experiencing that and it's been difficult. I do want to transition a bit just so that we make plenty of time for this. During our practice call, we talked about equity, inclusion, diversity, access, those things. And so I do want to talk about how we are managing to provide library services or instructional services to our most disenfranchised, marginalized students, especially right now. And I know some of that looks like curating an inclusive collection. Some of that looks like making sure to diversify methods of instruction. So that will include some of the SEL pieces, Elaine, that you were talking about. And some of that just looks like making sure that all of our students feel represented and feel like they're, or as many as possible, feel like they're able to find mirrors, windows, sliding glass doors. You know, Regine Sims Bishop here in the United States, a lot of people are familiar with her work, and she talks about mirrors and windows a lot. So Hanan, could you talk to us a little bit about what it looks like to build an inclusive library and why that's important to you?
Yeah, so for me, first thing I do is assess the collection, right? And I realized that my collection is not as diverse as I thought it would be. So for me, the importance behind it is I would like my students to feel that they are represented in the collection, especially because I have students from all over the world. And it's weird and funny in a way for them to read a book that all characters are white and they have all this cultural background that they don't have. For instance, if someone has never lived in a place that snows and they see in a book a place that snows all the time and it's Christmas, like they don't make a connection with that environment, right? So I try to make sure that the books that I purchase, they represent other places and places that the students recognize as their own. And I'm getting a lot of positive feedback from that right now. Like I have students who come to me, they don't go to the stacks anymore to look for books. They come to me and they ask me, show me something different, because I know you can find me something different and something that I can see myself in. I have a student in grade 10. Um, she comes to me and says, I want more books with Black kids. Please give them to me. Yeah. So it's been great.
I think that's great if you have the resources to be able to bring those into your instructional environment. Osa, what do things look like for you regarding diversity and inclusion?
I think at my school, we have a lot of leeway and autonomy in terms of creating not only classroom libraries, but what our library purchases every year. And so we were able to do that last year before the pandemic hit. But I too like to diversify my library. And what something happened last year when I was reading, I was going through the books and sort of trying to figure out what I could keep, what was appropriate for my kids, and just doing this mental inventory. And I was able to find, I found this book that was a Nigerian published book for lower elementary. And that was the first time in my life that I actually got to see my first identity like in a book. Wow. That's something I never experienced when I was a child, when I was in school. And it so shocked me that my kids were like, what's going on? I was like, this is the first time I've seen myself in a book. So that's interesting because I may have seen, I'll read books with Black children in them. They look like me, but they're not necessarily Nigerian or Nigerian American. And that's something else that I have to consider in terms of what is available to my students, because my school is also kind of like an embassy school. There's a majority of Nigerian students whose goal as they grow up and as they graduate is to go to the US and attend university there. And so our job is really important in terms of making sure that they see themselves while they're living in their countries, see themselves in the literature, get to see their identities represented, and that all of the teachers who are here also talk about that and show a respect for that. So that was really a really interesting experience for me, and something that I'm delving deeper into now that I know that it's available, because I really was quite ignorant about Nigerian publishing. I found a few books like that, and I'm thinking, right, I'm going to go directly to these publishers and ask them how we can collaborate and how we can make this more visible in schools around here.
So do you have majority Nigerian teaching staff as well, or no?
Not quite. We have 100% Nigerian teaching assistants. We have majority American teachers with some Australian, some British. And this year, the teaching staff has been diversified a little bit, which is good for the students. And I think that's something else that we're working on, because it's an international school. The student body is incredibly diverse. Many American students from all kinds of ethnic backgrounds, large Asian population, large Israeli, Latin American, but very, very many Nigerian students. So it would be very good if we got to a place where our teaching staff reflected the student body,
Mhm.
because that's just a starting, that's just a start.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you so much. Carlos, what does it look like to build a diverse and inclusive library, or to work on equity in your environment?
Well, it was a struggle. I can tell you that much. Our student population is mostly Vietnamese, and it has been a struggle to break the Americanization of their intentions. Not only the instruction they've received is American, but also the culture that they seem to want to receive is also American. So it's like they want to watch the American show. They want to consume the American media, and mostly they do through social media. So whenever they look for books, they would look for American references, and you're gonna see your Captain Underpants and Dogman and lots of white writers books being checked out. And one, I think a couple of years ago, I had the experience of reading Something Beautiful. I don't remember that author. It just slipped my head. Shannon, I think is her name, but I don't remember the last name. It's a book that is called Something Beautiful,
We read a lot.
and
I totally get it. Yeah.
the reaction from the kids was
Mm,
something that we had to deal with. They identify the main character as an ugly girl
mm,
just because how she looked. So
wow.
that was a wake up call for analyzing our collection and building it from down up. And now we have included a lot of diverse authors because they had their Vietnamese authors and they got checked out. But
Hmm.
aside from that, there was a struggle to get them to check out books that represented different cultures. This time we make sure that we have a good collection that is attractive so that the kids can get into experience different cultures aside from the Vietnamese and the American one.
So that's so interesting because, I always think about colonization. And I remember during the last Teashares, there was somebody in Chile who was talking about the large bend toward Spanish language materials and away from anything for the indigenous students. So when I think about diversity and inclusion in my community, it really looks like linguistic diversity and inclusion. I can talk a little bit more about that in a bit, but I'd love to hear from Elaine about what things look like in your environment.
Well, I'm pretty lucky because I've got a healthy budget and I can choose almost anything I want. In terms of what someone was saying about, the whole Captain Underpants, I think it was Carlo, is that I try to choose things. We're lucky because, a lot of stuff, I get a lot of immigrant type of narratives from Australia. So most maybe Southeast Asia, definitely in Singapore. There's a guy named Ando who talks about the refugee experience, and he talks about being a kid that's just new from Vietnam, and he's got a funny name, and he's in Australia and stuff. So I've had a lot of flexibility there. For me, I find it sometimes it's a little more difficult to find just the materials. That for us it's a bit different. Like things with the you can find a lot of things that are related to Black Lives Matter. For us, that's not a problem. I've purchased a lot of that. Like I was talking to you about Kwame Alexander's Undefeated and stuff like that, and also the great books he's written about how to read a book and poetry and things. That's not a problem. This thing about also about Mexican immigrants, that's not a problem. But for me, it's more about Southeast Asian, and with it's finding the things like the Rohingya experience I was telling you, and
Mhm.
Tibetan and stuff. That's the challenge. It's just I don't know if it's out there, and maybe I'm not looking hard enough. I'm looking in the wrong places. But I also try to get things that are for our audience, because we get a lot of kids. They're third culture kids, or they're coming from career or something because of their parents' work and stuff. So things like the name jar. I think most of you know the name jar. Where a Korean kid try to give her like a anglicized name like Betty, you know, or something like I don't, and you know how she
Really?
goes through.
Well, can you explain third culture, and then can you explain
sorry.
because I don't know if everyone is familiar with
Okay,
that.
sorry. It's just that I'm in my little bubble here in Singapore. So third culture kids is like where the parents are from. Like for instance, my husband's German, I'm Canadian, Chinese, and we met in Singapore. So if we had a kid, what culture is that kid?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they bring it up and we don't have children, but if we did, like, what would that child be, right? With German, Canadian, or is it Singaporean? You know, so there's
Probably
this whole
all
question.
three, right?
Yeah, exactly. Third culture kid, right? So, and then, you know, to be fair, there are books like that. Like I'm just reading one called Goodbye, Hello, Little Island, in Singapore, by this one by Leila Bukram, and she's Lebanese. She grew up in Germany. She's now in Singapore. She's been all over the place, right? So we're getting her in as an author visit. I was just talking. I can't remember. Was it? Perhaps it was Osa was talking about, you know, Nigerian authors and stuff like that. There's a question that I've never investigated. Maybe someone here on the panel knows, or maybe one of the viewers. You know, there's something by John Woods, who was a big executive up at Microsoft, and he started Room to Read. And his whole thing is he doesn't want to take Harry Potter and translate it into like Swahili or something like that. He wants to nurture local, you know, the authors and illustrators in that country. And I'm just going to put up a link here. It's from, it's called Making Way for All Voices to be Heard. And it's by his, I believe it's his Global Literacy Program Senior Director. And she talks about the Nigerian author, and I know I'm going to get this wrong, and maybe you guys have all seen this TED Talk, it's not new, by
Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
Adichie, yeah. So, oh, I almost got it right. So she talks about, you know, the one-sided story, and that's, have you seen that, Osa? The one-sided story about
the danger of a single story.
Yeah, the danger of the single story. So I was thinking, he mentions her in that, and the why we can't do that. And maybe I'll just put that link up. And so he talks about the Room to Read literacy program, where, you know, it helps girls out in underprivileged places all over Asia and Africa. And he says literature is one way to tell their stories, and our global collection in 42 languages contains stories that are as diverse as storytellers. And what they do is they nurture they say global book creators have the power over their own narratives and can develop their own stories of the lived experience of children in that community. So they want to train authors and illustrators all over the world to do that. I'll put that link in here. But my question is, I'm actually not sure if those books are available for purchase, because it would be great. There's also another group that's out of India, and they do leveled reading in different languages. It just escapes me at the moment. And so what they've done is, you know, you can download the books, not purchase, that's the wrong word. You can download the books for free and things like that. And they're at different levels, and, you know, Tamil, Chinese, Korean. And so I was just thinking about that, you know, coming up with authentic stories in their own narrative and illustrations. That doesn't answer your question. Your question,
No,
Julia,
it does. It does. If
yeah.
you're looking to find, you know, windows and mirrors specifically, then you should use own voices texts. That's what we call them here on, you know, in the US, texts that are written by authors that have those experiences. So it's so important, Osa, that you found a book that was published in Nigeria, written by, I'm assuming, someone who's Nigerian.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's hugely important. I know that Hanan, during the practice call, told us about some kind of book fair where you could buy books from international publishers. Am I right about that? In remembering that correctly, Hanan?
Yeah, that's the Frankfurt Book Fair, I think, wasn't it?
Frankfurt Book Fair.
And there's one in Italy too.
I think
he's muted. Yes.
Muted.
Yeah. Let me unmute
I
him.
think
okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So I'm almost put a proposal in motion, but then COVID hit. I was going to go to the Frankfurt Book Fair or the Bologna International Book Fair in Italy, because it's just 45 minutes away from here by plane. Yeah, I wanted to go there because I wanted to target the small independent publishers to bring unique books to my school. I don't know when that will happen after this COVID. Yeah.
I would love to go to an international book fair. I know that we have a local book buyer here in Colorado called Lorito Books, and they specialize in books, purchasing books from book fairs in Spanish-speaking countries. So then I can get books from Spain, books from Central America, South America, but I still would like to expand even more. And if in Frankfurt, I can get books in Farsi, I can get books in Amharic, Arabic, that would be phenomenal. Obviously, I can't travel there now, but that's something that I'm really struggling with, is that I was asked to find, for example, books for my Marshallese students, and I don't know that there are like YA Marshallese books written by Marshallese authors. I don't know, and nobody that I know knows if there are or aren't. So that's something that I really think we could do a better job of as a global community, is making the publishers could help us out a bit in terms of accessing the own voices text written in the, you know, the languages of people from all over. By, I know that shipping is expensive, we know this, but if you have a budget like you do, Hanan or Elaine, or, you know, perhaps you can throw me a little grant money, or, you know, there could be like some kind of, you know, pot of money which people can apply, and then they could get scholarships or what have you, so that we can have a little more egalitarian way of sharing. I see what time it is, and I don't want us to end before we talk about two things. One, how we are collaborating with teachers, and then two, practitioner, librarian, teacher practitioner as expert versus bringing in folks from other places and centering their expertise, even if they're not in the classroom or not in schools working with students. Because that's something that we talked about a lot in the practice session, was that sometimes folks will be flown in to do this professional development, having all of these best practices in mind, but they haven't been in the classroom in 12 years or 10 or 15. So I'm curious, Carlos, what does professional development look like? What's your role in it? And then if that doesn't apply, you could talk about how you're collaborating with teachers. How are they getting the learning that they need right now?
Honestly, you got me thinking with that last question. I was doing a research just not too long ago, and we were reviewing John Dewey's um, remarks and essays, and also Piaget's and Vygotsky's research. And there was a question. I remember that some teachers were in a professional learning community, a PLC. There was a conversation about, yeah, this guy's ideas were fantastic, and we are basing our practice on the research and the results from these great people. However, how much has changed since those experiments were done, and how much the population has changed? The student population has changed, and how would that impact how our curriculum is built? That Thinking about that last question about practitioners, bringing in practitioners that haven't been there in 12 years, and they're telling us all these best practices, but they haven't been there in 12 years. While I think one of the best things would be having teachers teaching teachers, because we are the ones that are in the classrooms. Um, right now, we tried in our school to promote that program, but actually we name it that way: teachers teaching teachers, and we tried to do it online through Flipgrid, like a professional learning community using Flipgrid. Teachers have just using a minute to teach a very small sparring practice that they do in their classroom. But it didn't pick up. Teachers were too busy. That's another problem for professional development. Teachers are in our school are too busy to participate in extra activities, even if these extra activities are for their own gain, and to learn how to do best practices. Um, in terms of teacher collaboration in our library, as I told you, the library is a hub, a collaboration hub, and teachers usually use the library to connect content that they're teaching in their classroom to the content that we promote in the library, or they ask the librarian or the librarians to connect their activities in classrooms to the media that we're promoting in the library. So how does that look like? Usually we do push-ins in their classes, and we help them in terms of curriculum and in terms of developing the activity to make it more engaging. That's
Thank
how it looks in our school.
I would say my situation is very similar. Just trying to make it more engaging is very challenging in the virtual environment, but that is one of my primary goals. Um, Hanan, what is your role in terms of educating teachers? And then can you talk to us a little bit about what your collaboration looks like, as well as your thoughts, if you would like to share any, on teacher practitioner as expert versus bringing someone from the outside in?
Yeah, so right now my goal, actually, this is my professional goal for this year. I'm focusing on academic honesty across the school. And that's something that came out of conversations with teachers as them not knowing how to look at citations and actually see that the students are plagiarizing. They're taking a long time to track that, even though they were using some of the tools that we subscribe to. They didn't know how to approach the students. So that's something that I took on, and I'm talking to teachers and facilitating that conversation right now on academic honesty at my school.
Mhm.
In terms of collaboration, I go to every single subject. The last year was my first year here. I was trying to collaborate more with science because that's my weakness point.
Mhm.
Um, Collaborating with science teachers, but I haven't had the opportunity to do that until now. So I'm still waiting. Last year I did a citation class, but not much. Uh, I did the graph plotting activity with mine. We did some. We looked at data, but we told them not to look at COVID.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, so we used the Google data set search first, and they looked at environmental changes and diseases, and but we excluded COVID, so they could be steered away a little bit from it and try to think about something else. I did that class twice. Last year, first week of school, I was brand new at the school, and they invited me for that class, and I helped them. And this year, I did a better job because I found some other data sets, websites that I could share with the teachers and students.
I need those.
Um,
So I might get in
okay,
touch with you if you could share the
okay,
data sets with me, because we are starting on Monday. So I'll be emailing
yeah,
you.
okay, I will, I will.
Okay.
In terms of professional development, teachers teaching teachers, just like Carlos said, is a big thing here. They also do the PLCs. Usually that happens before school hours. It's facilitated by any teacher or the curriculum coordinator. Anybody can step in and do a 15 to 20 minutes workshop session. If someone is not available at that time, what we do is we record the session and we send to everyone, and then people can watch it later on. That's what they're doing it here in my school. Uh, in terms of professional development, they try to bring people from outside, experts, especially for readers and writers workshop. But still, the teachers helping each other is the best way to do it, because these experts only come sometimes for a week, and they only get to see a few classrooms. They don't get to model in every single one of them. So you don't really see them practicing those skills that they're trying to teach you. So you just have to observe your peers. That's what happens in my school. Yeah.
I love that. I like the peer observing structure, especially when you can agree on the things that the person who's coming in is supposed to be looking for. So then you can really feel like it's a more reciprocal experience. Osa, what are your thoughts on, you know, published or other thought leaders coming in as experts on collaborating with teachers, and on the role of, the librarian, or in your case, future librarian, in terms of, helping teachers get from where they are to where they want to be?
Yeah, it really gets my goat. I know that's a very old saying, but it's perfect for this situation because I think that teachers need a whole lot more agency in deciding what their professional development is or should be, because they are the experts, period. And in order to be a good teacher and to serve our students well, we need to conduct research every single day, and we have the most access to that research through our students. we see them every day. We know who our populations are. We know what their needs are. And so for thought leaders to come in, yes, they are experts for a very small slice of whatever it is they're working on. But at the end of the day, the teachers within that school are the bigger experts on the student population. And so this is something that we've been pushing for in our school, because once again, our teachers are very, very busy. Our PD time isn't necessarily time that is decided, like the topics aren't decided by us. We sort of have to follow a calendar that's set for us. And this year we've really been pushing for something else, for something more authentic, for something that we see a need for. And I've been collaborating with our elementary school counselor around topics that have been coming up consistently with our student population. We've got first grade students who experience colorism, who have internalized everything that they see on television, who cry when coloring and want to color themselves with blonde hair and fair skin, because they don't want to use brown color pencils, who say, I'm not Nigerian, I am American, because they were born in the US, which many Nigerians will go to the US to give birth for citizenship and for more opportunities later. And so for them to be able to see that identity piece isn't either or, and that these are things that the teachers are seeing every day, and we can, as the people who see the children every day, we are the experts, and we can take that research from the outside and look at it and say, how can we use this to better serve our students? But if someone else comes in from the outside for 2 or 3 days or a week, that's someone who doesn't know the students, who doesn't know the teacher population, who hasn't received like a full view of the picture and doesn't have that information. So that's something that we're really pushing for, is that the teachers should be at the forefront of whatever that PD is. We should lead the PD, teaching each other, deciding who comes in and when, and also deciding what is important to push for, and then continuing that through the years, rather than, just starting something and putting a check mark on a list.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's an excellent point that you end on with, we don't want to just do a one-off, right? Ideally, the best professional development is something that is ongoing. Elaine, could you give us your thoughts? And then we've got about 5 minutes, so we'll probably wrap up after Elaine.
So you were talking about PD, right?
Yeah, PD, and who should be leading, and who is leading in your situation.
Well, in my case, I do sort of, there's two ways I sort of do it. I do PD with the teachers. Like, for instance, Renan he was saying like with the citation and stuff. So I'm already doing that with grade 6 and things like that. And so I might do a little taster, or I might give a 2-minute video, like how to set up a project in Google Tools. I try to set up videos that are less than 2 minutes, right? Because everyone's busy, and I always make that clear. And they'll watch that. And then I also, so one way is PDs. With the videos, short videos. And then the other thing is I go into the classrooms outside of library time. And I do, like, for instance, if we're doing noodle tools, I'm just focusing on that because that seems to be a big thing that's really popular with the teachers, and citation, academic honesty. And I can't cover that in a 15-minute period and do my, UOI inquiry lesson. So I go in there and I do it with the teachers, and they book me. And that's when teachers tell me that's really useful. We should get you in every week, right? So I do that with them. So they're learning as the students are learning. In terms of collaborating with teachers, because I said I teach so many kids, going to planning, I could do that. I'll tell you what happened. Up until last year, we had 2 primary librarians, and we lost, one went back to the Netherlands. So I took over most of the primary, grade 1 to 6. And so I found I couldn't go to planning meetings. It just wasn't worth my time anymore. So what I do is, and this is another positive outcome from online learning. They have a literacy planner, a numeracy planner, and they have their unit of inquiry planner. And I just go in and I look at it, and I just make connections any way I can with the library. And they really like that. And I'm really specific. Like I'll go like, I notice on your literacy, as per your literacy planner, and it sounds like a legal document, 2.4, I notice you're focusing on onomatopoeia or something like that. So in connection to that, I will do this book for your 15-minute mini lesson.
Wow, that makes collaboration really easy. Then you don't have to go hunting people down to ask them if there's a way that you could be fit into their lessons.
And I was doing that like a nut bar. I was doing that. I was like walking around talking to the PYP coordinator, how do I do this? And I said, well, they said, just look at it. I don't know how many of you are using something like ManageBack or Power School, but I found that was too late at that point, because that's not a working document. That's that's when it's finished and you decided, oh, that's what we're doing, right? But when it's working, I have to know what you're doing next week, right? So next week, what are you doing? Are you doing natural disasters? Are you starting that unit? So I have to really take a look at that literacy planner. So I do that.
Is that just a document that your administration created and then all of your teachers do?
Yeah, it's on a shared document. It's on a shared Google Drive. So we have a literacy, every grade has a literacy planner, a numeracy planner, and a unit of inquiry planner, right? So then I get, and so I think someone was talking about online, I can't remember who it was, but you know, so in terms of that, I know what books to, you know, you can create books on Epic, right? Osa probably knows that, right? Create collections. Yes. So I'll do so you're doing grade 1, sharing the planet, agriculture. So then I'll get all the books on that on Epic and collect it. And the other thing is LibGuides, right? So I create a LibGuide for that whole unit of inquiry, or if they're doing poetry, and then I send that out to them. So again, I think that for me, online learning, I know it's not great, but for me, I found it was a great way, a great platform to showcase what the library is doing. So do you have any online stuff? Yeah, we've had this for years. It's all on the LibGuides is like, sorry, I'm saying stuff that, you know, maybe other people in the audience don't know. It's like LibGuides is like a website, you know, that we share. It's like Google Sites. I'll say it's like Google Sites, okay? And so I'll just say, you know, just send the link out for that, and send the Epic book list out for that. And, you know, for your resource list from the print library, this is what I'm sending to you. And the video. So I found that this was a great platform. Like I said, it really got my game up in terms of like how to take that online stuff and then showcase it. And now it's carried over that now we still do this, right? So I sent out my weekly email. It's got numeracy, literacy, or UI, and of course the infamous dinosaur D-November and things like that, and what author visits I'm arranging online. Another thing was, you're talking about connecting to kids, right? And we're still, even though we've got 0 infections in the community, we can't have like huge theaters of kids getting together for assembly, right? So what I'm doing is, I know other people are doing this in Singapore. I'm doing a Wordiful Wednesday. So every 3rd Wednesday, I'm getting a principal or administrator come read stories to the kids, and they love it. You know, they connect to the kids, and it's just like we're doing now, right? And like on Monday and Tuesday, it's Deepa Valley, right? So we're getting parents to read to the different kids. And this is the great thing about online learning. We all know how to get on Zoom. We all know how to get on Hangout, right? It's awesome, right? So it works. So I still think there are ways to connect. And it's like I said, with this literacy, numeracy, these planners, it really helped us, you know, online collaborate. So that's what I got out of it. So
I really like the idea of doing the strategic collaboration rather than what I'm doing, which is going to the department leader meetings and saying, so folks, what's going on this week, you know?
Yeah,
and
I did that.
That's the eternal struggle, right? Is the librarian often is pushing themselves on people if you don't have a system and if you don't have administrative support. So that's something that I'm continually working on. We are working to rebuild our culture of literacy. November is Indigenous Peoples Heritage Month. So we are here working on stepping up the representation in libraries, but then also stepping up the programming to make sure that we're including our Indigenous people who are a cultural and ethnic minority in my district, but they are there. So we have to make sure that there's visibility, and we need to make sure that you know, we need to make sure that our students, all of them, see themselves represented not only in the actual content in the library, but in the programming in the library as well. So it'd be ideal if I could bring in an Indigenous author, but last time I brought in an author, nobody came, and it was a virtual visit, and that was awful. I announced it for 5 or 6 weeks in advance, and no one came. And that just really got my goat, Osa, so I was not feeling it. So we do have a question, just one that we can kind of wrap up with. I do think that we answered this in a way, but if there's anything that you want to add, then now would be the time to do it. The question is, apart from making sure students see themselves in the books, what can we do as white teachers to develop equity and inclusion? So I'm assuming that this is a white teacher asking this question. Anybody can feel free to chime in on that.
Yeah, well, not exactly a white teacher here.
I think the white teacher was saying, what can they do? They're asking us as non-white teachers what they can
read
do.
non-white teachers, non-white stories. It's just need read non-white stories. Read stories from Venezuela. Read stories from Nigeria. Read stories from Southeast Asia. Read stories from everywhere. If you're in Vietnam, don't read only stories about Vietnamese people. Read stories about everywhere, so that they get finally this idea that the world is one and we are together in all this. It's been like globalization has been pushed back in this recent years, and we as a librarians, we are the hub of diversity. We collect everything. We are there to show everything. We are there to show we have windows to pretty much every world in our libraries. Those are our books and our media. So we need to make sure that we provide teachers with access to read stories and present different stories to the students.
Thank
I
you so
agree.
I
much.
would I would include changing your vocabulary. Like for instance, avoid using the like black market. You know what I mean? Like in Portuguese, I never thought about some of the terms, but they're all like biased. So changing your vocabulary when you are addressing certain topics. Avoid using black market, blacklist. Oh, I was blacklisted. Why? Why are you using this term? So pay attention to how you speak, because that does hurt people a lot. So yeah, I would this would be one of my advices. Also including on reading and showing different viewpoints, paying attention to your vocabulary, how biased it is, and how you can, address it differently. Yeah.
And there are online resources for that. I can't think of any at the top of my head right now, but I know that I have seen them. If people do a search for anti-bias vocabulary or anti-bias, anti-racist vocabulary, because even words like minority, when you talk about people as minorities, we've actually been minoritized. So,
Right.
it's not that you're a minority. And I think that that's important. And learning about what Osa was bringing about, colorism and anti-Blackness, being familiar with what that means and that terminology is very helpful as well. Osa, you were going to say something?
I was. I think I agree with Carlos about reading books from different parts of the world, but also making sure, or about people from different parts of the world, but making sure that their own voices, like you mentioned earlier, Julia, because there are lots and lots of white authors out there who write about people and cultures about whom they know very little, and they create a story, like adding even more to the confusion, creating false identities. So when they read all of these books, make sure that they're books written by own authors, own voices, and make sure that they familiarize themselves with.
Osa, somehow we can't hear you. I don't know what happened. I think it might be your mic. Okay, it's good now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good now.
Yes. Just saying that they ought to familiarize themselves with what's out there. I think that was my internet connection.
Okay. No, we got
Nigeria.
most of it. It was just the very end that cut off. Yes, I absolutely. And the best way to familiarize yourself, right, is to get involved in the process of buying, curation, talking to people from all over, just as we are. Elaine, somebody asked a question. How do you suggest we change strategies such as De Bono's 6 hats for that negative use of Black as a word? I'm not familiar with any of that.
I am, but for me, De Bono, that's, I have to admit, that was something I studied in my Master's of Education. I haven't looked at it since. So
I have a lot of those.
I mean, do you have to use the 6 hats? Like, are you married to it? It's not necessary. It's viewed as an inquiry-based way of getting students to think deeply about their learning and about themselves. There are other strategies, there are other tools and other methods. If anything you're using is potentially harmful, get rid of it. There's so much more out there. It doesn't have to be that.
I'm going to drop an article from Teaching Tolerance about curriculum violence in the chat. Even though some people feel like a pro-Black or pro-non-white people's agenda is curricular violence against white children, that's something that I have heard. I think that it's always important to remember that there are within any society, even if it's a society with very few literal Black people, there are going to be ethnic, linguistic minorities, people who are at the bottom of the social, pyramid, who are experiencing layers of oppression. So identifying who those are in your community and making intentional moves to center them and to, remove the marginalization going on, that's the work. That's a big part of what the work is. So I'm going to look for that article. And then if there are any things that folks want to add before we wrap up, now would be the time to do it.
Sorry, are you asking from us, the speakers?
Yeah.
Okay.
If there's anything that you want to add before we wrap up, now would be the time. Any parting thoughts or anything that you would want the international librarian community to think about?
Can I just say, for me, I think the biggest part is really collaborating with your teachers. And like I said, there's different ways. It doesn't have to be that group planning. I don't know, Julia, how many grade levels you cover, but I cover 6 or 7 sometimes, right?
6. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like for me, I just found it impossible. And there's other ways of, I don't know if there's a shared, I just found that so useful. At first it was the group planning, giving me just 5 minutes. And sometimes, I don't know about you, I just go in for 5 minutes. I say, what are you guys doing? And I sort of absorb it. And then I say, I'm sorry, I got to leave and go to the next one. And they understand that, right? Sometimes you just got to touch base person to person. If you can share any documents, I mean, most people do some sort of planning on a document that's shared, right? Yeah. So, and the online stuff, we've all got on some sort of online materials. I think whether it's Epic Books for free, or whether it's like Books is for free right now. This online story time for early years, and we're very lucky. I mean, I feel very privileged, because our kids are in Singapore first of all, and the school's well funded, and we have online databases that they can use when online learning, both in person and at home.
And one of the things that I will say is that all of us are, I'm feeling like all of us are in somewhat privileged environments. Like we have budgetary means to do the work that we want to do. So I guess my call to action for folks who see this presentation would be to think about equitable distribution of resources. How can we not opportunity hoard? How can we not resource hoard? My goal is to provide the resources for my students. But if I can manage to think even bigger and think about who in our immediate environment could benefit from, virtually joining our school for an author visit, for example, then that would be a sharing of resources that would help make things better for those who are in my immediate environment who are not able to take advantage of the things that we are able to have. So that would be my call to action. Anybody else?
Kind of wanted to, I don't know if this could be an answer to Chad. Chad Hyatt was asking the question about the bonus Sid has. I kind of skewed over it, but I would suggest changing the colors of the hat. I mean, doesn't seem like black or white had any meaning whatsoever to what the hat are intending, and in terms of what they are supposed to do. For what I read, just change the color. Black could be magenta. Why not? White could be lime, and why not? I mean, it works for Among Us, the video game. You can use pretty much every color, and none of them has to be the imposter. So just change the color. And my message to the librarians everywhere in the world: video games are media as important as books right now. It's the books are these are the books of the next generations, and we have to understand them as such. We have to start understanding them as the media that some of the kids are consuming, and they're consuming his stories from in there, and they're consuming experiences in there.
I love that. I will definitely be reaching out to each of you at some point. So just know that I am listening and taking in all the resources that you're dropping, and I will be reaching out at some point this year for your knowledge and expertise. Osa, any final words for the global librarian, um, you know, community?
Yeah, just to realize that there are a whole bunch of us out here who are doing the same work. And so find your people, find your community who are like-minded and collaborate with them, because this is, you can't do your work in a vacuum. And it's a whole lot easier when you find your tribe and you're sharing resources and you're sharing your thinking with each other. So find your people, share your learning, and just share your access with each other.
Love it. Thank you so much. Henan?
I'd say highlight diversity as much as you can in your collections. The way I'm doing it too, from the back end cataloging, I am changing all the metadata. And a single example here is if we're looking for a book about LGBTQ plus, if you go now into catalogs, you will see the words gays or lesbians. I am removing them because I feel like those are negative words, and I'm using the term LGBTQ plus. You know, I'm changing when books are about people from a certain place in Africa, they just write Africa or African peoples. I change that. I look for the right location and I acknowledge the peoples from those places. So I'm changing the metadata from my whole collection. It's a mess, but it will be organized before I leave my school. Yeah.
I love the braveness behind that. You seem very committed and just like no matter what, making it happen, even if it's a mess. When I genrefied my library, it was a mess. Stacks of books everywhere, but now they can go to the supernatural section and they can find exactly what they want.
That's it.
So,
yeah.
So that worked as well. Well, thank you so much. This has been amazing. Given the fact that it is so early here, I'm probably going to go back to sleep, but I am very, very grateful that I got to spend Saturday morning with all of you. Seeing your faces has made me very happy. And hopefully the Teashares community will continue to share this with folks as the rest of the school year goes on. I know that they can reach out to me on Twitter as @JuliaAaron80. Carlos, how can people get a hold of you?
I'm gonna write it in the chat because I don't think the pronunciation will be quite as easy to understand. It's Panda Cucho. I am there on Twitter and I'm constantly talking about video games and libraries and books all the time.
Great. And Elaine, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
I think Twitter, LinkedIn. What I'll do is, why don't I give you, I actually set up a web page for myself and I'll just put that down and people can reach me out through there. Yeah.
Cool. And Osa put hers, it's @GoodApple. Yes, did I say it right?
Yes, The Good Apple.
The Good Apple. Great.
Yes.
And then Henan is 293. Henan. Thank you so much. It's been great to see your faces. I will actually miss you. So take good care. Be safe. Be well.
Yes, you too. Bye.
Okay. Bye.